My name's Alex Cozy, and I'm the Nature Center Manager at White Point in Fairfax Canyon. And I'll go ahead and welcome you inside and give you just a quick tour and a little bit of history through the space. Welcome in. And White Point Preserve has such a rich history with so many people living and working in this area. So I'm going to a few things in our nature center. And our nature center is set up in a timeline. So we'll start at the early history and we'll make our way down to present day. So if you want to take a look at this gorgeous mural, it depicts what the peninsula may have looked like in the Pleistocene era. So as you can see, there's lots of wildlife shown here that we no longer see on the peninsula, like this saber-toothed cat up in the corner. But this is a beautiful depiction. And just as Megan was saying, the Tongva peoples have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. And they've used this land and the native plants for medicinal, spiritual, building, and also their food needs to help them survive. And later on today, we'll go on a little tour of our native garden to show you around. And if you take a look over here, you can see White Point was also part of the original Rancho de los Palos Verdes land grant, which was given to Jose Loreto and Juan Sepulveda. They were the original land grantors, and this space was used for cattle ranching for many years. And the land stayed in the Sepulveda family for several generations. And you can see there's just lots of rich history. This was also a time when lots of some of the plants from Europe were kind of introduced into this space. And if you take a look over here, so we have this beautiful display of some of the native abalone that have been here in the past. So back in 1898, Roman Sepulveda leased part of this coastal land to 12 Japanese American fishermen, and they harvested and exported abalone here and made a wonderful living. But unfortunately, by 1906, the abalone population had fallen fairly low, and it wasn't profitable anymore to harvest them. So White Point was also used as a farmland. You can see over here, Roman Sepulveda leased a lot of the property to Japanese American families who worked and lived on the land and produced fresh vegetables for the entire community. And if you take a glance over here, we've got some beautiful pictures here. And in 1917, Roman Sepulveda and one of the Japanese American families actually built this beautiful resort on the coast called White Point Hot Spring Hotel Resort. And it was a very popular vacation spot up until the late 1930s. And there was a large storm that unfortunately breached the swimming pool. And in 1928, and there was also a large earthquake, the Long Beach earthquake in 1933, which shut off the sulfur hot springs that were below. And then on top of that, there was also the Great Depression happening. So unfortunately, the resort had to shut its doors. But we still have some of these lovely pictures to show a little bit about the amazing past. And there's also some remains. So if you go down to Royal Palms County Beach, you might have noticed that there's a dance floor that still remains. And there's also a wall from the pool that's still there, and the fountain up above the cliff as well. So unfortunately, the Japanese American families who lived here and worked here for so many years were forced out of their homes during World War II, and they were held in internment camps, and White Point's use changed very dramatically during World War II. During World War II, the space was actually turned over to the U.S. military, and it was used as a coastal defense against Japanese military attacks. So there are still several historic guard shacks that are on the preserve today, as well as 2 large gun emplacements at the top of the hill on the preserve. And they used to hold 16-inch diameter guns up at the top. They're no longer there anymore, but you can see the concrete that's still up there for those history buffs who are interested in taking a peek. So during the Cold War, White Point was also a Nike missile site. And there's still a large concrete pad just outside that was used to hold the missiles beneath it. And then in 1974, the military eventually deactivated the space, and it was turned over to the county and city for recreational purposes. And luckily, we got to actually take this beautiful building and repurpose it, because it used to be a missile assembly room. So this is a beautiful piece, an interesting piece of history in itself, and we've gotten a chance to reuse it and turn it into something beautiful as well. And in 2000, the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy went into a management agreement with the city of Los Angeles, just as Megan mentioned earlier. And with lots of hard volunteer work, thousands of hours of volunteer hard work, it's turned into this beautiful, beautiful preserve. And we're helping to create habitat for endangered species like the California gnatcatcher. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this tour. We're actually going to head out right now to take a peek at the garden.
All right. Yo, real quick, Alex.
Yes.
Someone's asking where the place is. Where are we located?
So it's actually, if you take Paseo del Mar all the way down to where it dead ends, if you're coming south on Western to where it dead ends, take Paseo del Mar to the left, and we're where that road dead ends. So we're actually in that area where the landslide was as well. So if you happen to know where that is, you'll be able to find us. Unfortunately, our trails are closed at the moment, but we hope to have them open soon.
Sweet. All right. So now.
Hey, Megan. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Megan.
How are you? I'm good. Good to see you, Alice. I'm over here with my fancy water bottle, by the way. Shout out for this beautiful design. Am I right? I'm definitely a native plant nerd. So, to that point, let's talk about plants. Right here, I have the most beautiful iris you've ever seen. Ironically, it's called blue-eyed grass. Sisyrinchium bellum. It is just such a gorgeous plant to have in the garden right now. Let's put in the light so we can really enjoy it. You see that plant? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine putting that as a focal point of your new wildflower patch? Additionally, if you don't like the way this guy looks, you're not into the irises, you can use, everybody loves the arroyo lupin. The arroyo lupin graces the peninsula this time of year. Every year in the spring, we have fields and fields of it, and it naturally recruits so well. It's in the pea family. So you can see those pea pods there. And that is, something very distinct about the Fabaceae family. The wind is kind of messing with me a little bit here, but you can kind of see the digitate leaves there. So those leaves are called digitate because it looks like it's giving you a high five. So that's another way to identify the lupin. And those beautiful pea-shaped flowers. Oh my gosh, I just love lupin. I'm going to pop these guys down. Let's get into the real garden where the real inspiration happens. Before I do that, though, I have to give a shout out to this beautiful monkey flower. This is called sticky monkey flower. It's called that for a reason. These are very sticky leaves. The beautiful trumpet-shaped flower is supposed to look like a monkey face. I think everyone I talk to doesn't quite see it, but maybe it's like an artistic thing that I'm just not doing, right? But it is another stunning plant. Again, native plants are so gorgeous, and they're really important this time of year for pollinators. Pollinators are really important. We definitely don't want to have to do pollination on our own. Who wants to get out with a Q-tip to do that? It's very important to have plants in our lives, right? So we might as well plant the beautiful ones that have great function. Here's another look at that blue-eyed grass in case you didn't see it, in case you're just joining us. You can kind of just do a little view of it here. But before we leave the area, oh my gosh, aren't we distracted by these beautiful white pearls right here? Wow. So this one is called California Everlasting. Everlasting because these flowers are everlasting pearls. Isn't that great? It also smells like maple syrup. Don't you just want to have to smell that? I wish you guys could be here to experience that with me. But you too can experience it if you buy some of our plants and join in on our Earth Day fun this month and have your own little volunteer day where you plant yourself a little California Everlasting. Oh, isn't that fun? We have so many great wildflowers coming up right now. Springtime, they're in full flush right now. This one is called Wine Cup Clarkia. You can kind of get a close up on that. Wow. These are so great at self-recruiting. The nice thing is all you have to do is spread a little bit of seed in your garden and it'll just go like wildflower. Poppies are the same way, by the way, and we'll definitely touch on those as well. We're coming across a really interesting kind of riparian stream area. This is a swale kind of coming through here. It's not as maintained as we usually have it because we don't have the volunteer days right now. But it's kind of a nice way to see everything in its natural state and see how our natives are holding up. You know, this is kind of the test of true restoration. If I have trouble walking through here, this is successful. So this right here is purple sage. Tell me if I'm going too fast. I'm very excited. I just love plants. The passion is exuding. How many of us know about purple sage? Anyone have any tidbits? Nobody on the comments? Oh, yeah, all right, I'll keep rolling. So the cool thing about the mint family, well, there's lots of cool things. One, they smell really good. Lamiaceae, they're really known for that. And it's a great thing to have if you definitely want to kind of spruce up your garden and the smells, the aromas as you're walking into it or you're walking into a space that can really, but also they have these stunning flowers that are on these whorls arranged on a square stem. And if you look at it in a cross section, you know that it's square. And so what happens with these flowers once they go to seed is they kind of enclose on themselves and then they get a hardened, very small seed in the middle that just drops. And so these whorls are like a mechanism for seed dispersal, which you'll see is a common theme as we kind of go through the garden. So those are going to just disperse outwards. It's kind of like a physics mechanism. So very cool plant. It gets to be quite large as well, and so you really don't need a lot of native plants. It's very economical. If you want to get a gallon plant from us, for example, it's only $10, which I think is a steal when you can get this much area. And considering if you got like a poppy or you know, any of our wildflowers, it'll just self-recruit over time. Well, I mean, all of them will. So great. Here's another good look at that everlasting we were just talking about. This one used quite a bit. They think that this is going to be in the mint family, and gosh, it looks like it should, right? It does. It does. Alex is feeling that way, but it's actually in its own family. This is Western Vervain, and it's verbena.
So is it not minty and delicious?
This one I don't think has a smell. Does it?
You know, let's actually give it a try together, shall we? All right, come on, Alex, let's give it a smell. Oh, it has a little bit of smell, but let's compare it now. So we got to compare it to the purple sage. Yep, the purple sage is far more aromatic, so that might be the distinguishing character. I actually don't know, and if we have botanists on the call, feel free to type it in there so that we can all learn something too. We're just talking about what we know. All right, well, again, through the field of purple sage we go. We're off to the first section of the Tonga Native American tribute that we have here at White Point Nature Preserve. It's very important to us to talk about the Tonga because this land, you know, was theirs originally before it was, you know, farmed by, you know, the Japanese, or before that the Sepulveda family ranched out here. And then we had the military acquire White Point, the 102 acres and more, 172 acres to be exact. And they built all these structures that really degraded the site. If you can see right here, this is one of the structures. So this must have just been a utility spot. Above it is a bunker. And then if we pan over here, you can actually see that's a missile launch pad over there. Oh my gosh. Let's wait for this helicopter to go by, huh? We can wait a little bit. We're gonna build the excitement, right guys? All right, so yeah, any questions about the military history that Alex or I may not have touched on? It is really interesting that there is an existing missile launch pad there. All the time we get questions about, like, are there tunnels going through San Pedro to the, like, Fort MacArthur? And that's definitely a rumor. I personally have not been down there, so I'm not going to say so one way or the other. But it's definitely a rumor.
I've heard a lot of local folklore that there are some folks who have been down there in the past, apparently.
Yeah, but you guys might not be able to see the missile launch pad so well from this angle, and that was actually by design. So we have not removed any of those quote unquote historical structures from the military time frame, but instead what we wanted to do was just regrow all of the natural functional vegetation around it, especially focusing on large trees to get more shade out here. And I think we're on our way to covering up that missile launch pad little by little, especially from this angle. You can see, oh my gosh, that little elderberry in the background. We've got some mule fat, just a beautiful riparian area whipping through the coastal sage scrub right here. And then oh my gosh, that, cherry tree in the distance is almost covering the bathroom. So, we're getting there. We're getting there with our demo garden for sure. Speaking of elderberry, here is a lovely picture of it. I'm going to zoom in on that. I mean, this is one of my favorite trees. When I get my own property, I am planting elderberry 100%.
I agree with you, Megan.
Oh my gosh, isn't it beautiful?
It's got the best smell too. The flowers are really blooming.
And I haven't smelled it lately. Let me see. Oh, it's kind of like a honeysuckle, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, they have these nice little taco-shaped leaves with the little serrated edges. The laurel sumac has the taco-shaped leaves too. It's a totally different family though, of course, Anacardiaceae, right? But it doesn't have those serrated edges, and these are kind of a little more delicate. I just really like the way that this looks, one, but it also is, again, a wonderful resource for pollinators. It's a beautiful habitat for our bird species out here. We have a very special species out here, and it's called the California gnatcatcher. And its favorite plant is actually over here. I'll kind of flip back and forth between these plants. So I'm going to have you guys look at me over here. Or maybe Alex can talk about it too. Let's throw Alex in the mix. But we definitely want to talk about this California sagebrush and how the California gnatcatcher is its favorite plant, isn't it?
It is. So it really loves to build nests in this plant. And the gnatcatcher is such an adorable little bird. You actually will be more likely to hear them than you will see them. They make a really funny noise. It sounds almost like a kitten. I remember the first time I heard one, I thought there was a kitten that was loose in the preserve and found out that it was really just the gnatcatcher. So they make a little high-pitched meow noise. I did not do it justice, but that's what they sound like. And they're a really incredible, amazing bird. And we're trying to provide as much habitat for them as possible. So by planting, especially these beautiful sagebrush plants, that's what our goal is, to create that wonderful habitat for them. Yeah. Any other plants that you found, Megan, that you
I'm
want to share?
in a very opportune location right now.
Oh, you are.
You guys come on over here. See what I'm up to. We're talking about 2 species of buckwheat that are very common on the peninsula. And it's a little bit louder.
No, we were mine.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So this is the seacliff buckwheat. Let's look at the seacliff buckwheat first. So I'm going to talk about 2 species of buckwheat out here on the peninsula. And just let me know, guys, if I'm not being loud enough. I can get a little shouty, so warn me the other way too, okay? So this is called seacliff buckwheat. And it's an important plant to have out here on the peninsula because it is the host plant for the El Segundo blue butterfly. And we'll touch on that a little bit more about the butterfly. But what I wanted to make a point of is we're really trying to advocate for this plant native thing. And that is because that butterfly is doing really well at the Point Vicente Interpretive Center, the Vicente Bluffs. We just got a new population that established at Alta Vicente. And what we learned from the recent U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey is that the butterfly only needs to be 1 mile from other host plant habitat to create a new population, which is very exciting. So that means that if you plant seacliff buckwheat and you live by the Point Vicente Interpretive Center, or you live by Abalone Cove or Pelican Cove, in that section, or even oceanfront estates, just anywhere within a 1 mile radius of that center, you could have an endangered species in your yard, and you could be a very important part of a special conservation issue. So I just wanted to make that little advocacy right there, because it is important to plant native, not just because they're beautiful, but because of the really important role they play in our local ecosystems out here, because the animals are closely adapted to the plants. So just one more note, I have the California buckwheat behind me. And what we learned is that we have to plant the California buckwheat further inland because it's such a good attractant for pollinators. It actually does attract some pollinators that can interfere with that butterfly. So just be careful with that. Try to keep it a little more inland if you're local on the Midland Peninsula.
We've got one question,
Oh, sure.
actually. Olivia Grace had a question about what this plant was called. Again, one more time.
I'm sorry about that. I'll try to repeat more. Thank you for bringing that up. So it's Sea Cliff buckwheat. So if you guys are taking notes and trying to get your plant list together, so it's Sea Cliff buckwheat and Eriogonum parvifolium. So Eriogonum is the genus for this plant. That's always what the first word is. Folium, usually the species name, the second word, has some sort of meaning. So in this case, parvi means small, and folium means leaves. So the names have a lot of meaning, even if they're in Latin. Usually, though, the genus is just named after some old botanist dude, or, you know, it's somehow related to a characteristic or a form, or it does have like a botanical relevance. But yeah, it is kind of interesting how that works. And the names do change sometimes as we do more scientific research, and you know, DNA is like constantly changing, and we're finding out new things and relationships on the phylogenetics of plants. So we go into a whole topic on that. But yeah, this is Sea Cliff buckwheat, Eriogonum parvifolium. And I want to turn it over to Alex again. I want to see what's happening down this way, Alex. Can you show me something?
Sure, let's take a look. So, we have this beautiful plant that we talked about a little bit earlier that we got a chance to smell. So this is that beautiful purple sage that Megan mentioned. It's in that mint family. So it's got the beautiful box stem and that awesome smell. This is a beautiful cluster of it. We've got several plants in here that are growing in, and behind us, there's actually one of our native trees in the back. It's a little bit harder to see. I'm gonna walk very gingerly. So you can see it has kind of those taco-shaped leaves, and they're a reddish color and a dark green color. That's actually one of our laurel sumacs, which is one of our native plants, which are one of our native trees, which we are trying to grow to create more habitat. And it's got a really fun adaptation. It has those taco-shaped leaves that look like they're folded to help shade it, because it is adapted to live in a really full hot sun. It gives it a nice little shaded area. So if you are outside like I am, you could hold your hands in the shape of one of those leaves, and you can see that one side of my hand is shaded, and that protects the leaf from getting too much sun. And it's a really awesome adaptation that this plant has to live here. Megan, do you want to take it off? Do you have any other cool plants over there?
Why don't you guys get a little further in the garden? We don't want to get stuck on one spot, right? Because there's the whole thing. I'm just going to stop really at the plants that have the most conservation value to us, because I think it's an important point to make, especially the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, such a political day in a lot of ways because of the Santa Barbara oil spill in 1969. That was really the thing that made the environmental movement so powerful, just the impacts of that. And I don't want to take it to that place, but Earth Day really is kind of a political day for all of us, land conservancies and other conservation groups, you know, California Plant Society, any plant groups, any wildlife groups, just anyone who is doing work with birds out here, and it really is valuable work. And we just hope that you learn a little bit more about it and have an understanding and a framework of what is California and what is this place and what's the sense of place out here. And it's uniquely these habitat types. So the coastal sage scrub habitat is unique to this area. And if we don't preserve it, it's gone. This is it. So it is really important that, you know, back in 2000, our group got into partnership with the city of Los Angeles, and we helped, our volunteers helped Bill Ayler who's the founder of the Land Conservancy, was really a huge advocate for saving White Point Nature Preserve and restoring it back to its native habitat. So we did a lot of work, and if you guys point the cameras over to the hillsides here, you can see our early restorations. Are we okay, guys?
Yes.
You want to flip around for everybody? Flip around for everybody.
So
Oh, yeah, I see. Oh, okay.
hey there.
Sorry, it's our first time going live, so I'm sorry if it's not super smooth on the viewer end. All right, maybe people are just tuning in now, so we can reiterate some of the points. Maybe some folks haven't seen the California sagebrush here. So, for folks that missed it, the California sagebrush is a very aromatic plant, and it's really interesting because it's actually in the sunflower family. And we just talked about the mint family, as you guys saw that link, ACA. A lot of people just call this sage, and it's not true because it doesn't have those square stems. It doesn't have those leathery leaves with the big stones.
All right.
Yeah, I got
All right, so we're back live. Sorry about that technical difficulty for a second, but we're back.
We are back, and you know, this is our first time going live, so there's going to be some bumps. We're trying to be adaptable here at the Land Conservancy, and so we're trying out new things. We've never done Instagram Lives. This is so special, and oh my gosh, it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. How perfect is that? I mean, I feel like I'm in the coolest place right now. I'm surrounded by coastal sage-grouse habitat, some really cool people. We have some musicians that are playing that you guys will get to see later. Oh my gosh, this is such a party out here. We just really wanted to bring this experience to you because Earth Day is so iconic, and we wanted you to have those vibes today. It's so important to us. And so I'm hanging out here with some of my favorite coastal sage-grouse plants, and I've been getting really into botany because that's what I do. It's just, it's like addictive, right?
It is.
Right? Yeah, the more you learn, you go out on hikes and you just recognize things, and it makes everything so much more alive to you the more you know. You can just experience things so much more. Like for this sagebrush, I have this growing at my home. I have 3 of them. I just can't get enough. It smells so good. You know, people are all into rosemary and lavender, which are great plants, nothing against them, but this has the best smell ever. I feel so strongly about that. So if you've never smelled a California sagebrush, you need to. It's definitely important.
Something's wrong. You need to, I don't think
Something's
you're
wrong.
live right now.
You're
Are we
not?
hearing me okay? Any issues on the other end? Comment, please.
Can everyone hear? We've got some folks who are joined, who are commenting.
Okay, good.
We've got 12 viewers right now.
Great, great. Well, thanks for coming, guys. I know you guys have so many other commitments right now. It's funny because we feel like, you know, if we're working remotely or we're schooling remotely that we're going to have all this time. But it's so funny. You have to be careful with your time management these days, or it gets away on you. So we do appreciate you tuning in to this very special Earth Day tour. Thank you. So back where we were talking about this beautiful plant in the sunflower family. And I know you're looking at it and you're like, what? That's not a sunflower. What is this lady telling me? She doesn't know anything. And well, actually, if you get closer to these flowering heads in the back here, you'll see those are actually called discoid heads. So when I say flower head, it just means it has a flat end to it. So that's a nice trick when you're just getting your start in learning plants, is if you see a flower and it's flat, it's going to be in the sunflower family. And this is the same truth right here for mule fat. So this is mule fat. It's also in the sunflower family. And the funny thing is, what plant does that remind you of, guys? Why don't you put in the comments? Did anyone think willow?
Skinny little leaves. I thought willow.
Yeah, it totally looks like a willow tree, and it's also in the riparian native plant community. And so, you know, we get that a lot. Mule fat, though, does have very different leaves. And again, it goes back to those flowers. The flowers are so informative. And so if you just wait till spring, give it some time, and look at these heads, it's obvious. Another thing about the sunflower is that it will have these very wind dispersed seeds. So Look at that. So that is how it disperses. And, you know, if you just see that flying around, you'll be like, ah, that's meal fat, Baccharis salicifolia. And the translation, which I know you guys don't speak Latin, so I'm going to translate for you. So Baccharis is the genus again, but salicifolia, salicit actually refers to salix, which is the genus for willow. And so folia, again, if you guys saw my talk about Eriogonum parvifolium with seacliff buckwheat, that actually, folium or salicifolia, just means leaves. So this translates to leaves like willow. So Baccharis salicifolia, repeat it on the other end. I know you guys are doing
Baccharis salicifolia. And by the way, shout out to Chloe Santos for being on a field trip here from a while ago. We miss you.
She remembered the willow.
That is so sweet. Well, thank you so much for being on the call today. And thank you everyone else too. I know a lot of people are tuning in. How many folks do we have, by the way? I'm
Right now
curious.
we've got 16.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good attendance for a little plant tour. You know, we're pretty silly.
Um,
Hopefully we kick it up a little notch here, and maybe we get some more people interested in our beautiful native flora, because it's so important, especially on Earth Day. There's nothing better to be talking about than to be planting the local plants in your area and respecting the history of that land. And that's what this is all about. We want this contiguous sense of place out here.
Mrs. Arig says hello.
Oh,
Hi, Mrs. Arik.
Thanks for tuning in. You can see I'm very passionate about our native flora out here. You know, and I'm also passionate about our fauna. It's so great. Here at White Point, we have a tiny little bird, and Alex mentioned it before, but folks just tuning in, it's called
Yes.
California gnatcatcher. It's a very dainty little bird, and it's actually doing quite well, the populations, because here on the peninsula, we're so lucky to have so much heritage coastal sage scrub habitat in existence. Especially nearby here, there's a reserve in the Rancho Palos Verdes city. We're in San Pedro, by the way, for folks just turning in. So in Rancho Palos Verdes, we have a reserve called Forestal. And that actually has the best heritage coastal sage scrub habitat out here on the peninsula, along with some really interesting geology out there. It's such a pleasure to walk around. Later on today, we're going to be doing a couple more live and recorded videos, and we're actually going to be honing in on a really cool rare hemiparasite. That's wild, right? So we love hemiparasites. They're super interesting. Hemi means semi, right? So it actually doesn't rely on the plant for photosynthesis, but it taps into the roots. So what Alex and I are going to try today, we're going to run a little experiment.
Super exciting.
It's so exciting, and I hope it's successful. I've seen it work at California Botanic Garden. Shout out to you guys for your success.
Yeah.
We have a couple of suspected host plants for the paintbrush. I almost blanked on that. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
You gotta be on have my back, Alex.
And one other thing, I want to shout out to Ronald from Mrs. Williams' class. Thank you for tuning in from Lomita Magnet. Oh, and oh, sorry, my name is Erin. This is actually Erin.
Oh,
So, my apologies, but thank you for tuning in, and we're so glad that you're live with us right now. And shout out to all of Mrs. Williams' class. And we have our awesome 3rd grade naturalist program. It's kind of on pause right now, but we offer some really, really awesome education programs here at the Land Conservancy.
We really do. And you know, Alex has done such a great job in her role as nature center manager.
Thank you, Megan.
I mean, she's new to the role, and it's so hard to believe that she was just, well, not just, she was an excellent native garden apprentice here at White Point, actually. Not that long ago. How long ago was that?
Well, it was a couple of years ago, actually. I think now it's a selfie mode. So hi, everyone. Yeah, so I started off volunteering when I was in college, and I fell in love with this space, and I knew that I wanted to do more. So I tried to get as much experience as I could. I actually volunteered here through, I believe, all 4 years of my college, and I used to be in the I used to wear that cool blue shirt for volunteer days, and it was really fun. And then I became an intern, and then I did an apprenticeship and now I am in this awesome role, and it's a great, beautiful space. I cannot complain about the place that I get to work at because, as you can see, so lovely. If you're interested in other volunteer opportunities, let us know. We're kind of working through those now, but
Yeah.
let us know later.
And you know what? I can actually speak to that. So we'll flip around again. We got to respect that social distancing. So this is an interesting tour for us. It's our first one, but it's also the only one we've done where we've done social distancing. And this is such a cool opportunity. We still get to interact with our supporters and our volunteers. And we want to just be as supportive as we can as well during this time of so much turmoil. We want to bring something positive into this world. And so that's what we've been focusing on for the most part out here. So again, thank you for tuning in. Just an update on our volunteer program. I don't know if should I have someone?
Yeah, we can.
Well, I was going to talk, but I was going to have someone film it. Hold on, guys. Wait a second.
We're working it out.
We're working it out. Being adaptive. Okay. So, I wanted to give an update on our volunteer programs because they've really changed. We don't offer the outdoor volunteer days, but we do offer Adopt-A-Plot.
Woo!
And I almost think Adopt-A-Plot is cooler.
It's pretty cool, guys. Pretty cool.
It's so cool because I don't even have to be out there. It's just you. It's just you and the habitat. You get to have your time with peace and just being with the plants, hearing the birds in the background and the ocean roaring. It's just such a intimate experience.
South Bay Live.
Quick thing.
Beautiful. Can we post about your programs and volunteer requirements on our website?
Of course you can. And you guys used to as well. And so thank you so much for thinking of that. And you should absolutely post about the Adopt-A-Plot program. I am highlighting it here because we actually need some help out here at White Point. I have a handful of people helping because of the current restrictions. I am so thankful. Big shout out to Tony Baker, who is our native garden expert out here. He is the reason that we have the opportunity to even do a tour out here because he's done such a great job with the maintenance in the demonstration garden. And we also have 2 new apprentices. So shout out to Michael Hakimi, woo-woo, and Dee Gustafson, who's not so new because she was with us the last period as well, and she is just so stunning. She's bringing so much to the program. We really appreciate you guys. So
Quick shout out. You can be any age to work on an Adopt-A-Plot. So this is open to lots of folks, and it's a great way to get involved.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll mention a little bit more, and then I want to turn it off to Alice because she has a pretty similar program here at White Point. Maybe we can talk about it when we get over to the north side of the garden. We get a little bit closer to the, what was it called again? Nature Club?
Oh, Nature Club.
Yeah. So there's lots of cool opportunities. We're not doing Nature Club right now during the COVID period for obvious reasons.
Yeah, but maybe we can do a little shout out to a couple of the plants that we planted for Nature Club.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? And I hope some of the Nature Club members are tuning in today. But anyway, just one more note on Adopt-A-Plot because we are so trying to get people out here, not too many. It's kind of a funny balance. Right now, though, we have some very small groups. So we have 3 people managing the demonstration garden. But actually, what I want to talk about is this buffer area. Can you show me the buffer area, Tim and Alex, our lovely videographers? So you might look at that field and think, wow, well, there's some beautiful yellow wildflowers. And I'm here to break your heart. I am so sorry. I'm breaking it, and I do it every time because people love flowers. It's like in our genetics to love flowers, and I do too. But unfortunately, these plants don't really have a ecosystem value, and they are indeed invasive weeds. And part of our invasive weed program management is to remove them before they go to seed, and then they contribute to the next generation of weeds out here. It just becomes a positive feedback loop of a self-perpetuating problem out here. And so we really need volunteers to help us manage this effort. And so we're hoping to attract some Adopt-A-Plot volunteers to help us with these buffer areas. And I keep mentioning buffer area, and I totally didn't explain it. So so my apologies. The buffer is to help us keep this demonstration garden maintained over time. So we have wonderful programs, and hopefully we have them in perpetuity. But if that were ever to end, which it does when we talk about restoration, eventually we just want nature to take over, right? So at that point, we hope that we have enough large shrubs and trees out on the perimeter of the garden where it's not going to just get overrun by invasive black mustard and garland daisy, which is what we're seeing out here. Just one note on the black mustard, because I think we got to talk about it. It's important to mention it out here on the peninsula because there's a lot of confusion over it, and I hope to answer some questions through this. But Tim, if you flip around, you can actually see what the black mustard looks like 9 months out of the year. If you look at that stand of dry stuff out here, I'll get on over here. Oh, just me. More and more severe here in California with high frequency fires. That is just a bunch of kindle ready to light, and you see how close those homes are. It is a huge issue out here, and we need to manage it. And this year we put together a proposal. We hope to get goats out here, and oh my gosh, who does not love goats? They're so adorable, and they always have the babies, of course. And so if we had goats out here, you guys would be able to interact with them, bring your children. You can help us with the Adopt a Goat event that we have. Such a great opportunity. You only have to pay $100, and that helps us pay for, I think it's a day, right, Louise? It's a full day of grazing, and these goats are so ambitious. They do so much work. They're like hungry. They're just ravenous. They just keep eating.
They do an excellent job.
It's so crazy. It's like the perfect solution to our issue out here.
I don't know. I'm going to try and pan over, but there's actually a little ground squirrel hanging out.
Ooh, yeah, let's try to find that guy. We'll get some wildlife in here too.
I don't know if I can get much closer. There he is. So you can see he's sticking his little face up over. He looks kind of like a brown blob right now, but he just ducked down.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out to our ground squirrels. They're awesome.
Nature distraction. I love it. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Keep doing that, by the way, because I will ramble about the plants. It is a problem. So sorry, guys. But anyway, so my point is, we hope to have the goats out here. And another note that I want to mention, other ways that you can support us is you can actually watch National Geographic tonight at 8 p.m. There's a very special film event going on this week on Earth Day. That's the end of our program. It's called Born Wild. And I don't know much about the film, but maybe Louise can give us some information. Can we say hi to Louise?
Sure. Hi, I'm Louise. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We just wanted to invite you tonight. We're partnering with National Geographic Channel. They're going to be showing at 8 p.m. tonight, Born Wild. And it's going to be followed at 9 p.m. by a movie called The Hope about Jane Goodall as well. And we're partnering with National Geographic, and on April 29th, next Wednesday at noon, we're going to have a scientist and explorer that's featured in the film tonight on a Zoom conference. And all of you can call in or be part of the Zoom meeting. You email us to RSVP and ask this National Geographic explorer, who's an expert in brown bears, anything you want, and listen to what she has to say about her incredible research for these cute little bears. And you just email info@pvplc.org, and we'll send you the link to the Zoom and the pen to get into the meeting, and we hope we see you on Zoom next Wednesday, April 29th, and enjoy the movie tonight. And that's it.
Awesome. It'll be an awesome party. We hope that you can join us for that. It should be a lot of fun. So, do we want to keep wandering down that way?
so much as an organization. I mean, these are just small little tidbits, a little piece of the picture. So please do visit us at www.pvplc.org. It has so much more information, and we're actually redoing our website too. It's so exciting. I'm excited for that. What was it? Is it $10 for the film?
Earth Day. We're saying that
Oh.
if you want to support all this incredible work, Megan.
Yes, I know, and it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So special, and so, you know, we're just really trying to celebrate that this month.
Sure.
It's
Louise again. It's Louise again, and I just wanted to let people know that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day today. We're so excited for all the work that we've been doing all year long, and we rely on everyone's support to make that possible. And if you would like to give a donation to help the Conservancy with the restoration and the planting of all these beautiful native plants that Megan's been talking about, we'd love for you to send a donation of $50 in honor of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And you can give on our website at pvplc.org. Thank you. Have a great Earth Day.
Yes.
That's such a good point. You know, we do need donations more now than ever, like all nonprofits. You know, and so we do have to solicit to an extent. And, you know, that's our plant sales, goat adoptions, donations, volunteer support. All those ways of supporting us make a huge difference and magnify our impact out here on the peninsula. I mean, we manage 1,600 acres and we have a very small staff. And so it's just so important that we get the support from the community on the peninsula and elsewhere. LA County, Orange County, we welcome anyone, really.
Every dollar helps, and we appreciate everything, all of our volunteer hours, everything that you folks have done to support us.